I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. This is Christina Barr, and you guys are watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to. Sorry, that was really loud for some reason. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this interview that Trump just had with the National Association of Black Journalists. And some people think it's a train wreck. There were highs and there were lows, and so I just want to talk about and put some things into perspective. Also, Robert Downey Jr. Was announced at Comic-Con, obviously, but I haven't commented on it on Twitter or TikTok or anywhere. So I just wanted to share some thoughts about Robert Downey Jr. coming back he's coming back into the MCU, and he's going to play Dr. Doom instead of Iron Man. And so will this save the MCU? I'm sure they are thinking that it will, bringing him back. So I want to talk about that. Wind in your hair is a nice look. My just FYI, my air conditioning is like not working right now, and so I have a fan blowing. If it's loud, let me know. I don't know if my mic is really picking it up or not. It kind of seemed like it was on my end. If you guys can hear it and it's a distraction, I'll turn it off. But that's why I've been melting. I'll endure it, the heat for an hour, and just like gently pat my face if it's too loud. But you guys, please let me know in the comments, and I'll make a decision. But yeah. So lots of interesting things to talk about. Kamala Harris also had a rally the other night in Atlanta, and she had Megan Thee Stallion there, and some folks are really disturbed by the fact that Megan Thee Stallion was there. I mean, she was one of the people who did the WAP song. Can't hear the fan. Okay, good. Okay. And I mean, just considering that we had Amber Rose on the stage of the RNC, I don't know how much room we have to talk right now, but I didn't think it was appropriate to sing her songs, to have her music, to have the dancing and all the things that they were doing. And I think that was classless of the the Harris campaign, and also the singer herself. I'm like, how can you have an opportunity like this and then just think because you're in a suit that it's fine if you show up and you sing your songs and you have your girls twerking and stuff? But I'll save my opinions for that particular segment. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go check out the video they posted last night that shows the top 10 hoaxes of, with Trump, and how people tried to say that he told people to drink bleach and the losers and suckers stuff. So please go ahead and check that out. Share it with people. I don't know how much people are going to watch because it's kind of long. It's a little over an hour, but I deal with 10 different hoaxes and I debunk those. So it's a lot of information. It's well researched and there's sources and stuff in there. I think it's so hard to believe that there's people who don't know that the very fine people thing is a hoax, especially because you can just go to the original sources. It doesn't take any kind of effort to really debunk the fact that Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people. But a lot of people still believe that. There's a lot of people who still believe that he mocked a disabled person. Like I saw somebody on Twitter say that he said white women. I was gonna do. I saw it last night. I was gonna do a response to it and just be like, "Are white people okay? Are white people okay?" And then show her video. But she's like, "White women, we have a chance now because we blew it in 2016. We need to stand up for Black people, for Hispanic people, for abled people, or or whatever they call them. It's not transabled. It's and they don't say disabled. They say I don't know what they say, but and I'm like, is that because they're still thinking that Trump mocked a reporter for his disability? So anyway, I cover that one too. So please go ahead and check out the video that I posted last night. There's lots of great information and maybe some clips and things that you didn't know about those particular controversies. I took a while, like for the inject bleach. It took me a minute to find that on C-SPAN and have all the like relevant like context. Even when I hear people debunk it, they usually have a transcript. I found the actual video from C-SPAN. So go ahead and check out that video and watch it and share it. It took a long time to make and it's got a lot of good information. And you guys can support the work that I do if you appreciate it. You guys can go to the website and donate at blacktnews.com/donate. You guys can check out different merchandise that I have at the store. I recommend that you guys support in any kind of way that you can. You guys can give super chats too, which I do read, or super thanks, or stickers, or if you're on Facebook, you guys can send stars. And again, you guys can check out like different merch that I have on the store, like different mugs and teas and whatever. Anyway, let's hop to it. There's lots to say today. So anyway, Donald Trump had this interview and I saw it was coming up and there was this controversy because people didn't even want him to be interviewed by the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm pretty sure that's what the NABJ stands for. What else would it stand for? But people didn't want him to because, oh, he's so dangerous. They should normalize him, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. And so they decided that, yes, they're going to still have him come. They usually would have different candidates come. Now, Trump was under the impression that him and his opponent would both be there. And Kamala Harris didn't show up there to the event. And apparently they're trying to work out something where she'll either be in person or do a Zoom call. And the amount of grilling that they did with Trump, they would never grill Kamala Harris in the way that they grilled him. And it is certainly because they hate him. Not everybody, like Harris Faulkner was on the panel too, but there was such aggression from the first person who asked the question, and you'll see it. Like I feel like I'm not setting it up to mentally influence you. I'm sure that you'll see that there was aggression that I thought was like pretty unprofessional. You can at least be a professional journalist even if you don't like folks, and it's fine to push back and ask tough questions, but my problem with Democrats as a whole is that they really go too far. And I'll explain to you when I show you the video, the how the video started, how the interview started. It's pretty wild. But he went ahead and he sat down and he pointed out that he was there and Harris wasn't there, but they would never treat Harris the way that they treat Trump. And there's so many things that hit her hard on. And she has an incredibly radical record of things that she supported or co-sponsored when she was in the Senate. She said incredibly radical things when she ran for president. The state of the country is not to people's liking. That's the main reason why people don't want Joe Biden and why he had to step aside for the sake of democracy. But the truth is that he's afraid of democracy because when people have to look at his record versus Trump's record, people would decide to go with Trump's record. It's not just his mental faculties, because if the country was slamming, people wouldn't care. They wouldn't say, I don't care who's ruling this puppet. The fact of the matter is the country's doing well. Like people would get over it. I think people just don't like inflation. They don't like the prices of everything. They don't like the state of the world with wars and uncertainty. They feel like America is weak and projecting confusion, and they just don't see a good future for their families right now. They don't like that these boys will be in their girls' locker rooms and just totally crazy radical stuff like that. And so if people were okay with the country, they would make excuses for Biden's age and his mental faculties, and they would still vote for him. He'd still be up in the polls. But as soon as Afghanistan happened, his polls started to go down because this return to normalcy, you know, step away from the chaos mentality that they were pitching with Joe Biden, people started to see that it was not true. It just wasn't true. So anyway, I don't want to distract too long. I'm going to go through Greg Price had some clips. I'm just going to go to his page and look at some of this stuff. But before I, since I'm on his page, let me show you, because he posted this too. Let me show you guys this video of the shooter. Like, I know I'm switching topics all of a sudden, but I saw this video earlier and I don't want to forget about it. This guy was running, like, he wasn't like stealthy. Like, the Secret Service should have been able to stop this at so many different points, but he's not even like stealthily running.
Should we bring him up for a couple of minutes? The world will see a vibrant Republican.
I mean, just look at that. He's just look how close he is.
The world will see a vibrant Republican.
That's insane. It's insane that this all happened. And this happened not too long ago. Just to bring up something else that's crazy, I don't know if this is still true. Let me see. If at one point, if you started Googling Trump, the assassination attempt on Trump, Google would not automatically populate it. Okay, they do now. They do now. But for a while, it was trending, and people were talking about on Twitter and TikTok, and I did try it. I tried to populate assassination attempt on T, and it would just say Truman. They would not give you the Trump option. It was so weird. So that's it. I just tried it, and it seems to be okay now. But before, when I tried it, I'm like, that's wild. Anyway, sorry to get off topic. So this is how the event opened up. Apparently, it started late, which Trump will mention. And this is like the first question out the gate. They did say thanks for coming a little bit, and it just immediately went into this hostile kind of energy.
It's not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe Black district attorneys. You've attacked Black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking Black supporters to vote for you, why should Black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for Black workers and Black entrepreneurs. I've done so much. And, you know, and I say this, historically, Black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke. And I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late, just so we understand. I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was
President,
wrong.
I would love
I think
if you
it's
can
a
answer
very
the
nasty
on your rhetoric
question.
and why you
I have
believe that
answered the
Black voters
question.
should trust you with another
I
4
have
years.
been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln.
That's
my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act.
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
It's not true.
Sorry, I was muted. So this, there's a little bit more that had cut off in the beginning, but you can see that it was just like a list of grievances, the questioning starting off. So, Democrats, they really, really go too far. So if it was me and I wanted to nail him on something egregious, you guys can hear me now, right? I turned my, okay. If I wanted to nail him and if I was her, I wouldn't resort to, you said this thing about black attorney generals. No, he said something about these prosecutors or attorney generals or whoever that were not following the law, were not prosecuting people, who were treating people unfairly, who weren't doing their job, who were incompetent or whatever. And maybe they happen to be black. Maybe they happen to be black. This phrasing with these issues of like with Omarosa, when Omarosa quit, like everybody hated Omarosa when she was part of his administration. People hated Omarosa when she was, you know, in the transition team or whatever, or before he won presidency and she was pro him. People hated her on The Apprentice. He didn't hate her, but she's like a notorious villain. When you think TV and villain, you think Omarosa. There might be some other people, but she is like, if you did a top 100 list, she might be in the top 10 of list of TV villains. And so people didn't like her, said all kinds of nasty things about her. But when she started, you know, saying nasty things about him and he said nasty things about her, they're like, oh, how dare you call a black woman a dog? How dare you talk about black women like that? How dare you? But they don't bring this sort of energy when it's a black person they don't like. When the MSNBC says incredibly racist, terrible things about Clarence Thomas, when they say stuff, and it's just not MSNBC, but I can think of specific clips from MSNBC about Clarence Thomas, Tim Scott, you know, that they've said, you know, calling them like Uncle Toms or Uncle Tims or Uncle Scotts, or there's people, somebody called Tim Scott a house Negro. And that it was kind of funny how he replied, because he actually like said Senate Negro, because he's, you know, not in the House, he's in the Senate. So he was a good sport about people being racist toward him. But people can talk all kinds of ways about them, and they don't say, oh, you're attacking black people. It's no, you're attacking those individuals. So when Trump attacks someone for their specific behavior, if they have a particular skin color, that means Trump is a racist. People say all kinds of stuff to me because they don't agree with my ideology. And I don't go around saying, oh, how dare you attack a black woman? Unless I'm just kind of joking, just trying to shove their ideology back in their own face. And you don't have to you can disagree with somebody if you don't share their ideology. That's fine. You can criticize the actual policies, criticize the actual work that the person is doing, but don't do this. Oh, you don't like this person. You're attacking black people as a whole. No one from the left, when they attack me, says, oh, we're attacking black people as a whole when we come after Christina. Nobody does that. They just want to do that for Kamala, or they want to do that for Fonnie Willis, or just anybody on their side. So it's really disingenuous. It's brain dead sort of thinking. It's beneath the dignity of her profession, but she asked the question anyway. And any black person with some common sense just needs to step back and think and say, wow, they must really think low of us if they think this line of questioning is supposed to emotionally manipulate me away from voting for policy or something. Now, there was a valid thing that she asked there. She brought up you had dinner with a white supremacist. She's talking about the dinner with Nick Fuentes. And when that happened, I don't know how long some of you have been following me. Some of you I see in the chat have been following me for a while. When that happened, that was still like, I don't even know if Trump had announced yet in the primary. It was sometime last year, whatever. I was so mad. I was so heated. I was so mad about it. I thought it was so ignorant and stupid, and I couldn't believe his people allowed it to happen. And I thought obviously it would come back to bite him. I'm really surprised more people don't bring it up. Someone said, I remember. Anna said she remembers. I was mad about it. I was mad about it. And I don't understand why more people didn't bring it up in the primary. I don't understand why the voters didn't care about it more in the primary. There's some pretty heinous things that Nick Fuentes has said all over the internet. I have clips of him saved of him saying that he loves Hitler. And I'm not joking. I'm not joking in the least bit. And creepy things about liking young girls, and though people suspected he's gay. I don't know. But now I don't expect that Trump himself knew all this stuff about Nick. I don't believe Trump knew that. But Nick came with Milo Yiannopoulos and Kanye. And that dinner or whatever should have never happened. And his people failed him. But nevertheless, they were there. So if she wanted to ask a question and say, okay, on such and such date, Nick Fuentes came to Mar-a-Lago with Kanye and Milo Yiannopoulos, and these individuals have said blip, 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 this stuff. So why would your staff, set up that meeting and for you guys to have dinner? Like, and how are Black people supposed to feel about that? Like, if the question was that, I don't know if his pushback on her would have been very effective, because her question and her mannerisms and her tone were really off-putting. And she just threw in a whole kitchen sink. Really insincere line of questioning. There was one like nugget of legitimacy there, but she clouded it with all this other garbage. So when I say the left does too much, they try too hard, they always go for the extreme, and they have to pepper in like misinformation and lies along the way. I don't understand why they do that. Maybe they're just addicted to the lies. And maybe it's just the shock and awe method of reporting, and they just like, I really want to tell them off. So I'm about to write my essay and my question, when something more concise and accurate would have really been a kill shot. I don't know how he would have handled it. He probably would have said, I didn't know who he was. And I didn't really have dinner with him. It was just like a hot second. And, my staff, I would have fired someone if they set that up and been like, I don't know if he did though, but I would have. I would have fired somebody who allowed that to happen. Been like, I fired this person who let them there. Like that's how I would handle that situation if I were him, I guess. But they do too much. They do too much. So she was pretty hostile the whole time, and Trump kept coming back to her, talking about her being so rude or whatever. And he was, nice to Faulkner. He likes Harris Faulkner, who's from Fox News. She's on the panel too. And he kept talking about the equipment. Like it was hard for him and Harris to hear each other because she was at the end of the stage. So they just seem to have all kinds of problems. Issues can happen, but you are interviewing someone was a past president and perhaps future president. Now this question, I didn't like this answer here. Like people might think it's funny, but I'll let you know why I'm not too much of a fan.
You believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect
historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
And
you
I
believe that
think
she is
somebody should look into that too when you ask continue in a very hostile.
you believe that
Yeah. So, so they had asked about her being a DEI hire and people saying that, and which, you know, he did ask them to clarify. I don't think he answered the question great, but going this route of like, is she black? Who knows? I didn't know that. Now people are saying that and people think it's funny, and there are black people bringing that up. It's just, but it's not going to be like a really effective talking point, especially not for him. There's like certain things, and you can dislike this, whoever, you can dislike this, but this kind of discussion seems more like, you know, sometimes you complain about family, but it's in-house, and when other people talk about it, it's like, that's not your place. I think that's how people will take this, because I promise you these conversations and these questions are happening, and people are pointing out like, oh, Kamala, you weren't, you since when were you black? You identified as this, blah 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 blah. Now I don't know if she's definitely been promoted as first, you know, Indian, first Southeast Asian, or whatever, along her career. That doesn't mean that, but there's been other black women who, you know, made different accomplishments. So I don't know if that necessarily says that she didn't identify as a black person. So, you know, I just don't think this is a great line of attack. And I don't think it's kind of his place to make that attack. I don't think it's a place for that his surrogates should make that attack. If people online want to talk about it, I guess that's one thing, but there's so much content to use against Harris as far as her policies. And he didn't really attack too much on that in here. I mean, he talked about Biden and the state and inflation and the border. He got her on the border, certainly. But there's so many things that he could have said about how he mentioned that the Democrats being super radical on abortion, but you know, wanting to ban fracking and saying that she would take executive order on firearms if the Congress doesn't act within the first 100 days. She will do it herself, and wanting to do mandatory buybacks. There's so much that people could use, because Kamala's trying to run on freedom, while having all of this, you know, anti-freedom stuff that she has said out of her own mouth, not like rumor stuff. Like there's a lot of things people talk about, how what Trump said this in the 80s, or Trump said this and it's written in some obscure book somewhere. And it's like, okay, but Harris is on tape actually saying these things, and you guys have like rumors. Like this losers and suckers thing is a rumor, you know. But Harris, her actual policies are very, very radical, and they exist despite the fact that the media wants to kind of rewrite her story. So I don't think it's a great line of attack, and maybe he just wanted to put it out there for people to nibble on a little bit. I don't know, but I think the correct way to answer the DEI thing is, if DEI is good, I don't think if that's a good policy or good reason to hire people or focus on hiring people, I don't see why it's offensive for people to say that she is a DEI hire. But in reality, if you're upset at this accusation, you should be upset at Biden for announcing that he was specifically looking for someone with these particular characteristics, and he made it about characteristics rather than actual accomplishments and policy. You know, so, and Trump could say, and I think it's more important that we do focus on the content of her character, and we should focus on her policies and go into like a list of how radical she is. So I don't think the personal stuff is going to resonate with enough people. You know, people on right-wing Twitter or right-wing TikTok can make their commentary, but it's just not going to go to a good place. Allie Stuckley made a post that she did an interview the other day talking about how she thinks it'll actually drive folks into maybe Harris's arms, because there's some people who don't like Trump and they don't like some of his policy moves. And if they are also on top seeing that people are, treating her mean on things that I don't know, catty, then, maybe it's enough reason to stay home, and not vote. And, that's bad enough. So, we need to be careful about our line of attack. So that wasn't like a great moment for me. We'll see how that ripples. Maybe more people kind of look into her heritage, but I don't think, she's still a woman of color. I don't think you guys are going anywhere with that. This was a good moment.
I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system. I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case in Florida. Everyone said that was the biggest case. That was the most difficult case. And I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time. And he had 50 years worth of documents. And they ruled that he was incompetent and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We covered you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to different topics.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where
sir,
I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
No, excuse you. You're the one that held me up at 35
minutes. Yeah, he certainly kept mentioning that up. Now, I think they asked the question like, you're law and order, but you have all these indictments, something along the lines of that. And so him bringing up his case that they tossed it out because they said it wasn't like even constitutional how they brought it up. Now they were appealing that, so we'll see where that goes with the Florida documents. The Florida case documents was his worst case as far as legitimacy, as far as coming after him. And so that did get thrown out. Again, they're going to try to come at him again. They've appealed so they can try to do the case again. But mentioning that Joe Biden had the documents case and that the reason why they didn't go after him is because he was incompetent or his memory was bad and people basically feel bad is true. And it's so funny because when that information came out, the media was mad and they said that Robert Hur was, playing politics, and that was so unprofessional to put all that information out there, and it was biased and etc. And people didn't believe it. And Biden came out to do a press conference to basically rah, 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 I won. And then he just ended up seeming to prove the case. And the media tried to just pretend like everyone was bad for pointing out the truth. And now we know that they bullied him into not being able to run again because of his like competency and stuff. So it's just funny how the media really tried to cover all this up, knowing that Biden wasn't in the best condition, and they're still gonna just let him be the president while he's still not in the best sort of mindset. It's funny how they lie, I guess. Not in a ha-ha kind of way, but it's kind of more sad than anything. There was a moment, Greg doesn't have a clip of this, but they talked about immunity, because there was a case recently where a woman like threw a pot of water at a police officer. And if you slow it down, it does look like she threw the pot of water, but they'll investigate. Anyway, he's being charged for murder because he shot her up. And so they said, you want immunity for police, yet this happened. So, and he said he claimed he wasn't too familiar with the case, which the crowd, they laughed at certain parts and seemed to be on his side. That was a moment where people didn't seem to like be there with him. and like they didn't accept that answer. But he did say that he saw some of it, and from what he saw, it didn't look good. And so, like, okay, well, what about the immunity? And he said, well, they'll have to look at the cases, and this particular case, it looks like charging him is probably the right thing to do, but police officers need to be able to do their jobs. And he brought up Chicago and how much crime there is there, and people need to, the police need to know that they can act, and if there's something that happens and it's an accident, like they made a bad decision, then that's one thing. But someone like doing something this blatant, he seems to be okay with that. So I didn't think the answer was incredibly clear, and he needs to get better at that, because that is one thing where I've seen people who are more libertarian, more conservative, or maybe kind of independent, but like mutuals of mine who are more likely to vote on the right and definitely don't like Kamala Harris, but they are very concerned about his comments about police immunity and stuff. And I'm pro supporting police, especially competent police, and I want to be able to call and then be here very quickly. Fund them however. There needs to be, give them enough money that if I call them, they'll be here in less than 5 minutes or so, or just like if I need them in an emergency, I want them to be here. So I'm very like pro make sure the police are there. But if there's bad actors, they do need to face some kind of accountability. But he has to tighten that kind of stuff up. So I didn't think that was a great answer, and it was an obvious important question that was going to be coming because it was very recent events and that look absolutely freaking horrible. But he had other moments that were good. They grilled him about JD Vance and comments that JD Vance had been making. That took up quite a bit of time defending JD Vance. And they did ask him, I think Faulkner asked him, like, why did you select JD Vance? And he did a great job going through JD Vance's history and how he came out of difficult circumstances, and he really respects his intelligence and his success. And he talked about his credentials, and he went to Yale, and his family, and the family values are very important to him. And when they're like, they said that Democrats are crazy cat ladies, and this is so offensive, and Trump is just like, he's saying that the family is very important, and I don't think you're really interpreting him correctly, but from my understanding, he just thinks that the focus on family is very important, and he's not saying that. And Trump acknowledged that there's some people who don't have families, and maybe they never met the right person, or etc. And things are what they are, and you can still be successful, have a good life, and so on. But we do need to have a focus on having families and building society, and so on. So they were really fascinated with JD Vance. I would have said, I would have been on the topic a little bit and said, you know what? I'm sure JD would love to come and sit down and really share his opinions and clarify his worldview, and you guys should set that up. I'll make sure that it happens if you want to have that conversation. And they spent a lot of time on it, but he did stand up for JD Vance and his credentials quite well. And so that was good. And this question came out of it where Trump, made a quip that was, he's just a funny guy.
Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, well, I mean, my point is here.
But it was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy?
So, so I thought that was a, funny moment. Her question was, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little too judgy on like the cat lady comments or like stuff with abortion? And so he went on a rant about abortion and Democrats. He's like, the Republicans aren't radicals on this, and I think they're not radical because of me. And but he said the Democrats, they want abortion up till 8th and 9th month and even after birth. And then they're like, no, that's not true. That's not true. And he's like, Governor of Virginia, he said, you can put the baby aside. And he's like, what is he talking about? He's talking about executing the baby. Now, I don't think he's talking about like executing the baby. Well, I don't know. about putting it out of its misery, but like not giving them care, just allowing them to pass instead of trying to preserve their life, which is still pretty, grotesque, I think. But but Trump has a very specific example that people can look up at those comments. They keep trying to deny it, but it's the truth. And so I still think they should frame it as Democrats believe that healthy women should be able to abort healthy, viable fetuses. And he mentioned that everybody wanted it back to the states. And so they're like, no, that's not true. People wanted Roe v. Wade. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and this is the truth. Most people do not actually support Roe v. Wade. And now you might be confused because there's definitely been polls, and they mentioned polling that most people are against it being overturned. Now that is true. And unfortunately, a lot of people have no idea what Roe v. Wade was. Most people don't support abortion after 15 weeks. Most people, and I'm not talking about a plurality, I'm talking about a majority of people do not support abortion after 15 weeks. Mississippi put in a 15-week ban. So that 15-week ban, most people agree with a 15-week ban. It could not exist in the same reality where Roe v. Wade existed. So if you actually support Roe v. Wade, then you support abortion up until about 24 weeks. And at that point, pain and consciousness, all those things are on the table for how you're brutally killing the baby. And you can say, well, most abortions happen early, but it's your worldview is allowing it. I mean, it's to say, I think they're all immoral at any point of the pregnancy, but your worldview still allows for that. So you can't allow a baby to be protected at 15 weeks if Roe v. Wade is in place. So if you put the facts out there like that, and I wish Trump, could or would put the facts out there like that, so people would know, like, oh, what I support is actually kind of crazy. Oh, I didn't know that about Roe v. Wade. And Joe Biden, when he's on the debate stage, he made the claim that Roe v. Wade doesn't allow for late-term abortion. Now, it's very hard for me. I know Biden is an old fool, an old man, but he was still, in the law and other kind of stuff like that. So it just seems strange to me that he would not know that you could get late-term abortions under Roe v. Wade, that you could have abortion up until the 9th month under Roe v. Wade. It allows the states to make that position. What Roe v. Wade does is it disallows people from protecting babies until they're basically viable. Well, 24 weeks or whatever. That's what it does. Most people don't actually support Roe v. Wade. You just don't know what it does. So he's correct that, well, he'll say the Democrats are so radical on it. Kamala Harris, I've mentioned this before and people got really mad at me. Someone kicked me from a TikTok live after I mentioned this, but Donald Trump and Joe Biden, their opinions on abortion are kind of the same. Because Joe Biden claims he doesn't like late-term abortion, but his worldview actually supports it. Donald Trump apparently doesn't like late-term abortion, but it being up to the states, they can still do it if they want to. So they both might not like late-term abortion, but their worldviews both allow it to happen. So, that's just kind of the reality of the situation. But Kamala Harris is like no limitations. There's not a restriction I don't think she supports. And then there's people who are like, I don't like it, but I just think the woman should decide. I think the woman should just decide. But there are people who are against trying to convince women to not have an abortion. They don't think that we should be out there trying to say, hey, you shouldn't unalive your baby, or trying to put obstacles in their path. I think let's say abortion is a necessary evil. It should be the very last option on the table. The very last option. So people who come against pregnancy crisis centers and all kinds of different stuff. It's extraordinarily evil. People should be mentioning adoption referrals and all that different stuff. Like, look at Planned Parenthood's numbers. Like, download one of their annual books and look at how many abortions they do versus adoption referrals. Like, you could regulate this stuff some more and try to force them to at least, you know, try to make it so that these babies aren't killed. Like, try to help a woman come to a different decision instead of just trying to make her ignorant and say that it's a clump of cells. It's not going to feel, you know, it doesn't have a heartbeat, and other kinds of lies that they tell women. So they just go ahead and take a pill, and then they have to catch a dead baby while sitting on the toilet. And then they're traumatized for the rest of their life, or maybe not immediately, but eventually it'll hit them one day. I think we can do better for women and children. Now he didn't really he just said the Democrats are radical. He didn't really affirm, you know, the human dignity of the child. And then he talked about January 6th for a while, and he was really defending Jan 6. I mean, not Jan 6. I mean, but like they were asking, would you pardon the protesters? And he said if they were innocent. And they're like, well, they were convicted. And so then he was like, well, what about some people they allow them to go in? And so he's, you know, started talking about the kind of the right wing, you know, excuses for some folks. I mean, there are people who did break in, who did push in, who were violent, who were beating people. What Trump should have just said was, he did say that some of them were treated very unfairly. He should have just said, you know, and he did make the comparison, like, these people were treated unfairly. Look at what just happened, where people were burning flags and lifting up, you know, the Hamas flag, not Hamas, but Palestine flags, and were pro-Hamas. That just happened. And what about what happened, you know, in all these other cities, in Portland and so on, people burning stuff and people died, and, you know, different officers were killed, people were killed during some of these riots, and these protesters basically get released. So he did say that there's basically a process where things are unfair. And so he did make that point quite forcefully. And he could just, he made that point, and he should have just said, we're going to look at the cases. If someone was just walking around and didn't do anything and they got a really harsh sentence, then I'll probably allow them to go home to their families. If someone was assaulting a police officer with a flag, you know, beating people, you know, and so on, then their sentence is probably appropriate. We're going to look through it and just leave it at that. I think there's better ways he could have answered some of these questions. But as I was watching his, you know, aggression as he, you know, defended his position on here, I wish that he had that energy when it came to, like, protecting life for the unborn. I wish there was that kind of energy, because he does double down on positions that, you know, are quite unfriendly as far as, like, the major vote. Like, his positions on abortion, I don't think they're, so at least the ones that have more developed now, I think most of them are out of political convenience, and where he feels are political convenience. But there's positions that he doubled down on that aren't good in the general election, like the 2020 election was stolen, or, you know, stuff like that. And he believes what he believes, and it is what it is. But I just wish he would take that energy, you know, on the issue of protecting life. So let me see if there's I mean, we can watch the Jan 6 thing. They asked him what he would do on day one. He'd say he would do drill baby drill. He said close the border, drill baby drill. Let me go ahead and show the January 6th stuff.
Another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint that will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it in 100 years from now. They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to the people that tried to
rioters who
Now, where you said they did all that stuff more than I saw happen on January 6th, there's some awful footage from January 6th. And I know when they released more tapes, there was like some right-wing accounts like showing stuff like, oh, they let people in. There was some footage that looked freaking awful. And with people pushing through and, you know, and breaking windows and glass and breaking into areas and stuff. So I'm sorry, I didn't like that addition there, but to bring up the current stuff is good about stuff that's happening now and other stuff that happened before then. I think that's good to put those things in perspective. And he should have been like, and where was Biden? And where was Harris? Why did they let this happen? And why did they let all those people go? Where's the accountability? You know? But let's continue listening to his answer.
to assaulted
Excuse me.
officers.
You have to
Would
ask,
you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You
If
would
they're
pardon
innocent-
those-
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very tough system. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis, how come the people that took over a large percentage of Seattle, how come nothing happened to them? How come the
But
people
sir, we're
that,
talking about
how
people
come
that
the
were
people-
seen
no,
beating
no. We're
officers
talking
with
about federal
flagpoles,
buildings.
dragging them down the stairs. They're on
They
video.
try-
Have you seen that
Really?
video,
Oh,
sir?
really? Well, they
you would
shot-
pardon those. You would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in
140
Minneapolis.
officers
You know,
were
people died in
assaulted that
Minneapolis.
day.
And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look,
No one was
nothing
ushering.
is perfect in life, but you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C., they were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying. They were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice. That's why they went after me as a political opponent, because they felt they couldn't win without doing that. And we're going to.
Yeah. So he is correct. They went harsh after them because, I mean, they were tracking people down like crazy very quickly. And then some people they waited, like Ryan Kelly, who's running for governor. Man, they waited as he was kind of spiking in the primary to go after him and, you know, arrest him, like, you know, tear up his house in front of his kids and stuff. He's young kids and stuff too. So I'm like, why wait so late? Why wait to the midterms to come after him like this? There's just a lot of suspicious stuff. So he is right. We can't have two tiers of justice. But I just wish this answer was more clear, because people they're already clipping stuff and they're gonna put stuff in ads. And so I just, you know, I can appreciate his passion, but you always have to think about how they're going to try to clip this. Now, some things they don't care. They clip things out of context. They lie. And some things you can't help, but there's things that he can help. And I don't think this was the best answer. There's true things in here, but there's definitely better ways he could convey his messaging. So anyway, it was an interesting interview, not a hot and total train wreck. And there were moments where the audience was laughing and other things like that. So I don't know that it puts anyone in his favor. And I don't know if it really turns anyone really against him. I think again, if people are willing to be emotionally manipulated by, you said bad things about this prosecutor who was black, if you're able to be fooled by something like that, I don't know if your vote was on the table. And he doesn't have he doesn't have a lot of time to get it. Like maybe a neighbor or a friend can take the time out to really talk to them and convince them and say, like, that's like a stupid question that she asked, right? Like, it's like really dishonest, right? The way that people frame stuff. It's similar to the Trump mocked a disabled reporter thing to some degree. Like, oh, he mocked a reporter's disability. No, he mocked a reporter who happened to have a disability. That's one of the things I addressed in my top 10 Trump hoaxes. If you're not familiar with how to break down and just debunk that story, I recommend you guys go check out that video I posted last night on YouTube with the top 10 Trump hoaxes, where I debunked 10 hoaxes about Trump that were, in my opinion, the most damaging politically and to the country and so on. But anyway, let's move on. I want to very quickly talk a little bit about the Harris campaign thing from last night. So she had Cardi B there. I mean, sorry, not Cardi B. Megan Thee Stallion, and I think the classiest way I can describe this is trashy. Now there's people who are there and feel like, oh my gosh, look at this energy and this hypeness. This is one of the most famous rappers in the world. So they got a free concert as opposed to having to pay hundreds to thousands of dollars to see her. There were people who left the concert after she was done. There's people who stayed, certainly, but the energy wasn't the same. And so I just, I'm going to play a little bit of this.
Hey! Yeah. Body crazy, curvy, wavy. Yeah. Body crazy, curvy, wavy. Look at how I body that. Ended up in Katy Bay. Yeah, you look good, but they still wanna know. See me in that dress and he felt like he almost tasted that. Num, eat it up. Okay, 3, 2, 1. You know I'm the hottest, you ain't never got it. I'm present when I'm. What we talking about over here, y'all? Hey, if you love your body, let me hear you make some noise. And if you want to keep loving your body, ladies, let me hear you make some noise. Hey.
Yeah. Someone said that song is disgusting. Yeah. Now folks are like, oh my gosh, this is so awful. Now, it's one of the reasons why I wasn't too fond of the RNC having someone like Amber Rose, who literally had a sale on her OnlyFans account, speaking at the convention, because it kind of give up some of your high ground, guys. Kind of give up some of your moral high ground. But at the very least, Amber Rose did come dressed, and she wasn't twerking on stage or saying anything crazy. She's there with her crop top outfit suit, and there's people with short skirts and they're twerking on stage and singing, sexual songs. That's not how I would want my campaign represented. To be frank, I don't really like when I would go to Trump rallies and, there was different singers where, I didn't really care for some of their music. I'm trying to think of, was Ted Nugent, like in some of his language that he would use when he was on stage and some of the cursing. And I was very glad when things like Let's Go Brandon came up. So people were censored instead of saying bleep Joe Biden. I didn't like that kind of stuff, but this is, I just wouldn't want to represent myself this way, but it speaks true to the sort of hedonism that the Democrats are pushing. That, we're here, we're just here. If you love your body, let's say so. That's what it's about. It's about me, my self-indulgence, and I don't care the price that needs to be paid in order to satisfy my lusts, to satisfy my greed, to satisfy my covetousness. It's all about me in the moment and how I feel. It's about that kind of freedom. The freedom from truth and dignity and morality, just the freedom of the self, the worship of the self. So it fits very well with their sort of themes and their mentalities. I just wish that the GOP at this point was equipped to be a opposite of this. Now I don't think they're as bad as this, but they've surrendered again a lot of moral high ground on particular issues, you know. And it makes me sad. Someone said I wasn't crazy about Kid Rock's foul lyrics. Yes, not fond of that kind of stuff too. People, and it's funny, people be so excited, like, oh, we got Kid Rock, we got Ted. I'm like, I'm the kind of person who liked when Yolanda Adams was invited by Bush to the White House. You know, that was my jam. That was my jam. If you don't know Yolanda Adams, she is a very famous gospel singer, one of the best. One of the best. Now Kamala Harris, there was a clip of her in Atlanta where she was kind of switching up her language, and she developed like a Southern accent all of a sudden. It's weird.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
In 2024.
Yes, we will. So let's get right. And
yeah, so people are comparing that to Hillary Clinton. Like, I've come too far. I ain't no ways tired. People have like done mashups of like Hillary and then showing this clip of Kamala Harris, and someone had retweeted that video's black guy saying, Ian has never had a black friend. This is what we all do. My preaching in a traditional black church is exact opposite of my style in a white evangelical church. Not even close. Code switch is a double consciousness skill we've all had to learn. Do whites not know this? And I think that's weird. I'm sorry. You may be somewhere and kind of like adapt to how people speak anyway. I think all people kind of do that in general. But when I go minister at a black church versus a white church, I don't really switch up too much myself. I'm pretty much the same style wherever. But like switching up your preaching style, like how you deliver, whether you're going to do like the tuning is what it's called, like, and the Lord said, you know, that kind of stuff. So some people like are great at it. Some people, you know, don't like. I don't really tune too much myself. But versus like, I don't know, maybe you just kind of do a teaching kind of more laid back style or something somewhere else. There's a difference between how you deliver your sermon stylistically versus you've developed an accent that's definitely not yours. Now I guess you could say there's a code switching sometimes for how you talk at home versus how you might answer the phones if you work for a certain company. When my younger sister, she first got a job at Target, my sisters decided, like, they're like, listen to this, and then they called the store. And I heard, welcome to Target. This is Sabrina speaking. And I was just floored. I just could not believe what my sister sounded like. Just the phone voice might be different, but going to different places and switching up your accent. This woman is a Indian, Jamaican, Californian, Canadian. Like, she grew up in Canada and stuff. Like, you don't have a Georgia accent. Sorry, doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Not a thing. So anyway, Harris is very much, you know, promising to do things. kind of pretending like she hasn't been responsible for things. A friend of mine, this is Savvy, retweeted a clip of her talking at like an event, and she's just like, I'm at a loss for words. Are people actually eating this up?
Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself. And when I am president, I will work to actually solve the problem. So here is my pledge to you. Donald Trump does not care about border security.
Why don't they do something now? Why haven't they done something already? Like, do you guys remember, because it wasn't too long ago, that the Democrats and Biden was saying, I can't do anything unless they pass something. I can't do something unless they pass something, knowing good and well that they already did Biden already did something because he took executive action on day one to backtrack on things that Trump did by executive order on day one regarding the border that made it a lot worse. And then he eventually ended up doing an executive order anyway. You know, it's just really, really ridiculous. And I'm like, he only cares about himself. No, I think he definitely likes to say that I build a border wall. You know, maybe that's a little bit about himself, but do we not benefit if he actually pulls that off? Like, even if he like branded it Trump right on, like at the top, like the Trump border wall, whatever, like as long as it's up, wouldn't that be a net positive for the country? You know, remain in Mexico, all these things that he had to do, taking crap from everybody every day. They're separating children and the families at the border, even though people were coming with folks that they weren't related to. So they had to did rapid DNA tests on site and were separating kids from traffickers. And people are still ticked off about what they had to do. And they took all that abuse, in the press every day. And she's like, he only cares about himself. Acting like you weren't the darn border czar. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not supposed to remember that. We're not supposed to point that out. Okay. Anyway, I want to move on. I want to talk about this Marvel situation. I know we're over an hour, but I want to talk about it. I didn't do any TikToks or anything about it. And I talked just a little bit with my family. So I haven't really been thinking about it, stewing on this, especially with the report from Variety that the Russo brothers are coming back and they're at least it's being reported they're getting like $80 million. Some people are saying that it's not quite that. But with Robert Downey Jr., they're saying it's more than that. It's more than that. And so there's some people who work in the industry that are complaining about they got like $12.50 working on, Black Panther and other films, or 14 something working on other films, like wages like that. But then you read in the paper and they're working 70 plus hours for like $14.50 an hour. And Robert Downey Jr. gets like way more than $80 million in private jets and all kinds of different perks. And people don't understand that big difference. Now you can say, well, they think that he's well worth his money because they think he'll save the MCU. The issue with the MCU and Disney at large is that they've cared more about different narratives than actually creating good products. They care about hiring people who fit a particular checklist rather than people who actually know the material, care about the audience and honoring the audience. Maybe not giving the audience everything they think they want, but giving them something that honors what they've loved and stood for. It seems that very much that these folks resent the people who helped them build the company, who they've made money off of for all these years. You had like the She-Hulk writers who were like giddy to tick off the fanboys. Why wouldn't you want the fanboys to be happy? Like, you might do things that might make your fans upset. Like, I'm a writer. I make content and I'm like, I know this is going to upset like a reader and just like story wise, but it's good for the story. and maybe they'll cry, maybe they'll be mad, but they'll keep reading because it's a good story. Like, it seems like more they care about trolling their audience, and then when people don't like it, they get to say that they're racist or they're sexist and so on. So they're so engaged with identity politics. It's not just Marvel, it's just across the board. It's into their comic books, it's seeping into the actual animated Disney films and other things like that. And I'm not saying that they don't turn out good hits from time to time. People really like the Guardians of the Galaxy. That was a success. People really liked Encanto. The last movie they put out with Chris Pine, where it was like the Wish movie. There's lots of things in there that didn't quite make sense. And like they push agendas with Lightyear, and they wanted to make sure that it had LGBT stuff in it. And Chris Evans was mad and said that he can't wait till people die out like dinosaurs who would oppose their agenda. And they put stuff in there that end up costing a lot of money, because worldwide, not every country where they might want to show it at is for that kind of stuff. So is it worth the price that they pay? Because it's not like it's so intricate to the story where all this kind of stuff is necessary, or when they put stuff in Star Wars, and it's like South Park, like Turner, make him a chick, make her lame, make her gay, and that's just been their focus. And like, we have an agenda, we want there to be more female heroes than male heroes, and it's just all very strange. Just focus on creating good content, and meaningful content to people who have invested in the product. And a lot of people have just kind of walked away. I haven't watched Marvel stuff in a long time myself. I mean, I'm very like, I guess in the know of different stuff that's going on, but I just don't like Disney as a company and how they see me and my family and people like me. I feel like they deeply resent me. So Eric July says you shouldn't spend 50% of your money on people who hate you. So I'm like, that sounds like, okay, pretty good advice. So anyway, the Fantastic Four Doctor Doom situation, I thought the original, not the really, really old Fantastic Four, but the one with Chris Evans playing Johnny Storm, like, I liked him as Johnny Storm. I liked their Mr. Fantastic. I liked Michael Chiklis as the Thing. Jessica Alba as Invisible Woman wasn't awful, but she was a miss. But their Doctor Doom was like, I knew he was like hot stuff because of Nip Tuck. I don't like him too much. I definitely hated the new Fantastic Four that came out a couple years ago. That was one of the worst movie film experiences I've ever had. It was like a void of joy. Like, it just sucked out emotions and feelings from you. It was just, and then all of a sudden the end happened. It was a huge escalation when Doom came back and had all these powers, and just like, there was nothing really Doom about him. And perhaps I'm a weirdo, but I like Dr. Doom. He has a certain, I don't know, stature about him that I kind of like. So it's a certain presence about him. And I don't feel like, they've never pulled him off. So seeing what they might do with Marvel MCU, it's interesting. Now, I don't like Pedro Pascal is a really good actor. There's stuff about him I don't care for him personally in his politics and stuff, but he's a good actor. I don't see him as Reed Richards. They're some of their casting choices for the film puzzles me. But at Comic-Con, they announced that Dr. Doom was going to be Robert Downey Jr. And he's going to be apparently the main villain for an Avengers movie. I think one of the titles is something about Doom. And so he's going to at least be on those two movies upcoming. So it seemed like they're not going to really focus on Kang after what happened with Jonathan Majors, and they're going to focus instead on Dr. Doom. Now, Robert Downey Jr. seemed like he was really not going to come back again. They killed him in Endgame, and that was the swan song. He's done. And so bringing him back as Dr. Doom seems so lame to me. And there's people excited to see him, but I think it's lame. If they want him to save the MCU universe, I understand that. But not having Robert Downey Jr. there, I don't think that's actually the problem. I don't think that's the actual problem. I think failing to create new characters that stand up in the face of everything out, like to kind of to these new to the characters that were the core is a big issue. And but you know, Iron Man, like they made great films and people fell in love with these characters. It is not impossible to make people attached to new characters who can carry on the franchise forward. And they don't need him to come back. They just need to make really good stories. They just need to make really good freaking stories. Marvel was very hesitant to make Black Panther. Like they had to be talked into it. And people love that film. You know, I think it's overhyped. I don't think it's like one of the best, but I enjoyed watching it. It was good. It was a good movie, a good time. But people were very attached to Black Panther and the success of Black Panther. When I first heard they were going to do Ant-Man, I'm like, that sounds crazy. And then they pulled off Ant-Man of all things. Like Marvel, I think the problem with Marvel is largely that they're into their own hype too much. Like the Marvel humor is funny. So then they're like, okay, let's really double down on the Marvel humor. And then it gets to be too much. Okay? You know, maybe too many sky beams. Like they have a method, they have a recipe, and then they're just like pouring in too much of it. And that begins to kind of mess things up a bit. Now, I kind of think that they do too much with Tony Stark. And I heard some people say, well, bringing back Robert Downey Jr., that really shows me that Marvel is going to do their best to really pull this off and it be a great hit and so on. I want to remind you guys that there is exactly one good Iron Man movie. There is exactly one good Marvel Iron Man film, and that is the first one. The second one had way too much stuff in it, and so did the third one. And then they really doubled down on the Marvel humor and the Mandarin and all that stuff. Like I thought the movie was okay until like the big reveal, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then, you know, there was just too much. Like they did poor execution on the stuff. But the second one was too much, you know, and the third one was too much. And the first Iron Man film, you know, it was like, was it really like the Hulk was their first one. I think Iron Man was their second film, if I'm not mistaken. It was far more simplistic than these 3-hour films they make now. And there was a beauty about it. I'm not saying that they have to scale everything back to kind of how scaled back that was back then, but if you still watch the Iron Man film, it works. Now, I don't personally like the character of Iron Man. He's a jerk. I was too fond of him. When the first Iron Man came out, that wasn't too far removed from like Marvel Civil War, and he was like in the books, and he was definitely a jerk in that. And I was like, I just don't like Tony Stark too much. I could point to different books and his behavior in them, but I wasn't too big of a fan. But I saw Iron Man twice in the movie theaters because I felt like they nailed him. I think Robert Downey Jr. plays him a little too goofy, but like just the end at the press conference when he said, "I'm Iron Man," that whole moment where the media gets up at the end and he just kind of smiles, that one moment just nailed it for me. Like there, of course, it was an overall solid film. There's other moments that are great, but it just closed on such a perfect encapsulation of the character that it made me want to go see the film again. This character who I don't like really. And they've just lost a lot of their magic and their ability to produce something new and grand and great, because they just want to just overflow, double stuffed. And it's just a little too much. It's a little too much. I didn't like, and a lot of people didn't like how much Iron Man was a part of Spider-Man's story, him kind of taking on the Uncle Ben figure. Well, they barely kind of mention Uncle Ben. You know, I'm not too crazy about the Marvel Spider-Man stuff myself. So he was just like, you know, it was fine his role in like Civil War, you know, stuff like that, and his beef with Cap and stuff because they're like emulating the books and so on. But I just kind of felt like an Endgame, he was doing too much. I'm like, oh, he just kind of accidentally discovered what they needed to do time travel just while he was messing around. I'm like, that would have been an actually a great time to introduce Reed Richards, by the way. But you're like, oh, I just figured that out. Oh my gosh. Like making him surprised that he figured it out doesn't, you know, alleviate the kind of, I don't know, the ridiculousness of it. Not that I'm saying that he was not smart enough to figure it out, but he could just, in the scene, he just was messing around and seemed to have just stumbled into it. And I just thought it was a little much, you know. I don't know, but people really like Tony. I get it, I understand it, but he died, and they killed him off, and just let it be that. But if he has to come back and he's like a Doom, he's a variant of, like a multiverse variant of Tony Stark. They're like, oh my gosh, he looks just like Tony Stark. Is there any part of you that's like Tony? I remember Tony. How can you be this evil? Blah, blah, blah. If there's any of that, it just feels so tortured to me. And it's just too much. Like, let the man go. Let the man go. It's kind of like in Once Upon a Time, people love the evil queen Regina too much. At one point of the show, there's literally 2 Reginas running around. There was an evil queen Regina and a normal Regina. And I'm like, there's too much Regina right now. There's too much Regina. You guys are like into your hype too much about this character. She's a great character, but you're doing a little too much. And so this is kind of how I feel with it, with just Marvel, with some of the stuff they do, including with Tony Stark. Now, as far as him being able to pull off Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr. is a fine actor. I just don't see it. I just don't see him having the sort of presence to pull it off. I know he just got an Oscar for Oppenheimer. I kind of felt like it was a great film. It was. People did a stand-up job. And, you know, it deserved a lot of the praise that it got. I'm not saying he didn't deserve his Oscar, but I did think it was a bit overhyped. And how he was in Oppenheimer, I'm like, I thought him freaking out at the beginning of Endgame was I don't see a difference in level here. And I'm not saying that means he put out a bad performance at Oppenheimer. I'm just saying that he just, you know, he's just doing what he does. He's just Robert Downey Jr. So the sort of presence that Doom has, I just can't see it. I just don't see it. And I don't want this story to be about Doctor Doom, but it also be like, oh my gosh, this is a variant of Tony Stark, and this is so strange. This is so weird. I don't want there to be that sort of hang up. I want him to be Victor Von Doom. And is that so wrong? Is that so wrong to not want the corruption or this pepper flakes of Tony Stark to be in this character? Like, I would just like to see him done justice. And people can say like, oh, but no, there's a version of him that's a variant in the multiverse and etc. But I don't care. Like, there's too much stuff with the thing about the multiverse with Marvel is that they keep that's what fans always say, like that the writers could do anything because there's a multiverse it's the multiverse and there's a version in this in some obscure comic book. Okay, but I would like to see a real genuine Victor Von Doom pulled off, because we haven't seen it and I would like to see it, but they're not interested in that because they want a reason to bring back Robert Downey Jr. And so they're going to put all this money into the stars while they probably are still going to pay workers $12, $14 an hour, whatever, work them like a dog and give them really ridiculous, you know, expectations as far as special effects and so on. And I'm sure they'll spend enough time on the Avengers films and so on. But like some of the D+ shows, the Disney Plus shows, the people were obviously overworked, and even some of the films they were overworked and not able to put out like content that should have been as good as it could have been in theatrical releases. So I think Marvel just has their I focused on the wrong thing, and I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is good enough to solve things. Now, people might just come for the cameos, and people would have came for the Iron Man cameo. If you bring back Cap, people come back for the Cap cameo, and Secret Wars. If you sprinkle in Deadpool in there, and Wolverine, and Spider-Man, and how these characters interact, maybe that's good enough to get people in the seats. But to make him Doctor Doom is so bizarre. My sister said, hear me out. Henry Cavill as Dr. Doom. That was the Cillian Murphy from who did Oppenheimer. He was in, what's that show you guys watch? Where he's like a gangster or something. I didn't watch it, but people wanted Cillian Murphy to do it. I've heard people say Henry Cavill, he was rumored because he's doing something with Marvel. That he did do something with Marvel. I don't want to spoil it too much. He did do something with Marvel, but as far as like a bigger role, or something, people did think, oh wait, what if he did Doctor Doom? Now having an older person, since Reed, is being played by Henry's probably too young for what they wanted to do anyway. Looking at the comments. Someone said, Kat said, they really should have used season 3 of Once Upon a Time to wrap up the show. I love that show until they dragged it out and started beating dead horses. They did, but where did season 3 end? Was that when they had the curse again? Was that the Peter Pan thing and they all had to go back? I can't recall. I mean, I like some other stuff with like they should have not did the they definitely shouldn't have had that other season where Henry was grown up, but it is what it is. Pinky Blinders. That's what Peaky Blinders. That's the show. That's the show. I just don't see it for Robert Downey Jr. Again, he's a fine actor. He's a fine actor. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his Oscars. I'm not saying he's not going to bring something powerful to the role. I'm just saying, when there's so much content to use, so many books, so many, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the first game, was so good. It was so good. And Doctor Doom, little spoiler alert if you've never played the game. If you haven't played the game, I don't imagine that you will play the game. It's quite old. I don't even remember what it was played on. Maybe PS2, or PS3. I don't know. Doctor Doom ended up getting the powers of Odin and like remaking reality, and it was just an incredible story. And Doctor Doom is so dangerous because he's brilliant, but he's into magic and all kinds of different stuff. So there's so much potential with Doom, and I just don't want this emotional baggage from Tony Stark to be dragged into Doctor Doom. I'm sorry. I think he's far worthier than that as a character. I do. I do. So, gosh, I don't like this. And you can say, well, you don't have to watch it if you don't like it. I won't. And why are you complaining about it? Because I can. Because it's my platform and I can do what I want. And there's been a lot of debates about this. Folks saying they don't like it, that they should have left him dead, and that they've already used him. They don't need to use him again. I can't imagine people pretending like he doesn't look like Tony Stark or isn't Tony. It's I don't want a tainted Doctor Doom. I just want Victor Von Doom. Could I be tempted to rewatch this stuff? Or they're like, no, it was really good and they did Doom perfect. Where Henry Cavill was Doctor Doom. Like, I don't know. Like, is there a way to lure me back in the seats? Maybe. I don't know. But this is not the way. Anyway, that's all I got to say today. I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you guys. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on the website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please. Yeah, Dr. Doom loves his power, and I love Dr. Doom. Something about ambition. Something about ambition. I don't know. There was one comic book. It was The Mighty Avengers, which I hated that book. And I don't like Captain Marvel, but they were fighting Doctor Doom, and he called Carol a fat cow or something, and she was offended or upset about that. And I'm like, you're obviously not fat, lady. Like, why are your feelings hurt about Doctor Doom calling you a cow? Like, and then everybody like had thought bubbles, so you got to hear their thoughts all the time or read them, and I just found it to be really distracting. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here. I don't know if I have some feedback. I hear some feedback in my headphones, but please go to the website, check out different content on the website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. Please check out that video that I dropped yesterday about the Trump hoaxes, and make sure that you guys share it around, especially with people who believe some of these different Trump hoaxes, because they've definitely been debunked, and I went further in the debunking and brought a lot of receipts. So go ahead and share that around. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.